A UN-backed report declares famine in Gaza, saying more than 500,000 Palestinians are facing catastrophic famine conditions. The EU and the United States publish a joint statement setting out new customs duties as both partners move from trade intentions to implementation.
Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez announces the creation of a new interministerial commission for climate change.
Gaza is gripped by famine, the first time a confirmation has been made. According to a Rome-based IPC report, more than 500,000 people in Gaza are trapped in the hunger crisis marked by widespread starvation, destitution, and preventable deaths. Following the report, the UN warned that the situation is likely to spread across the territory without an end to restrictions on humanitarian aid.
It is a famine, the Gaza famine. It is a famine that we could have prevented if we had been allowed. My ask, my plea, my demand to Prime Minister Netanyahu and anyone who can reach him: enough. Ceasefire.
The IPC report comes after months of warnings by aid groups that Israel's restrictions on food and other aid into Gaza were causing high levels of starvation among Palestinian civilians, particularly children. Israel on Friday once again rejected the report, insisting that the findings were based on Hamas lies.
Israel's defense minister Israel Katz warned that Gaza City could be destroyed if Hamas doesn't accept Israel's conditions for ending the war. It comes just a day after Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said he will give final approval for the occupation of Gaza City while starting negotiations with Hamas on Israel's terms. Earlier this week, Hamas agreed to a ceasefire proposal drawn up by mediators from Egypt and Qatar. However, Netanyahu said he would only end the war on conditions acceptable to Israel. Meanwhile, Israel has not indicated it intends to slow down the expansion of its offensive. The military started calling medical officials and international organizations in the north of the Strip, ordering them to evacuate to the south. Plans for the expanded military offensive sparked widespread international outrage, including from many of Israel's closest allies. Human rights groups have repeatedly warned of a worsening humanitarian crisis in the Strip, and famine was officially declared in Gaza by UN-backed groups on Friday. Protesters gathered in Tel Aviv and in Gaza. In Tel Aviv, demonstrators called for the return of the hostages. And in Gaza, hundreds protested against mass relocation of Palestinians to other countries.
The European Union and the United States are moving from trade intentions to implementation. On Thursday, the two partners published a joint statement setting out new customs duties. The text provides for a maximum duty of 15% on a large proportion of EU exports to the US. Once again, the European Commission is defending this compromise, which has been the subject of much criticism.
Let me say this clearly. The alternative, a trade war with sky-high tariffs and political escalation, helps no one. It hurts jobs, it hurts growth, and it damages businesses across both the EU and the US. And this is not theoretical, as nearly 5 million European jobs, including many in SMEs, would be at risk. This deal avoids that path.
The 15% ceiling ultimately includes cars, pharmaceuticals, and semiconductors, but uncertainties remain for other goods. A joint statement remains vague on steel and aluminium, two products that are soaring transatlantic relations.
We still don't have a clear solution on the steel and aluminium tariffs, where here it says there's supposed to be a tariff rate quota, meaning that there will be some amount of steel from Europe that will not have the 50% tariffs on them, but we don't know how much that will be and what will be the actual tariff rate on that.
As implementation kicks in, exemptions from the 15% cap are granted for aircraft and spare parts, generic medicines and chemical precursors.
North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un held a ceremony in the capital Pyongyang to award state honors to soldiers who returned from combat in Ukraine and to mourn those killed, according to state media. The soldiers and commanders who fought alongside Russian forces against Ukraine in the Kursk region were given so-called state hero titles. Kim also placed medals beside the portraits of fallen North Korean troops, described by state media as martyrs. According to South Korean assessments, North Korea has sent around 15,000 troops to Russia since last fall and also supplied large quantities of military equipment in support of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. South Korean officials have expressed concern that North Korea could receive badly needed economic aid and advanced military technologies in exchange for its war support, which could in turn enhance the threat posed by Kim's nuclear weapons program. A car bomb and a separate attack on a police helicopter in Colombia killed at least 17 people on Thursday, according to authorities. In the southwest city of Cali, authorities reported that a vehicle loaded with explosives detonated near a military aviation school, killing 5 people and injuring more than 30. At least 12 police officers died in the attack on the helicopter. Authorities said it was transporting personnel to an area in Antioquia in northern Colombia to eradicate coca leaf crops, the raw material for cocaine. Colombian President Gustavo Petro attributed both attacks to dissidents of the now disbanded Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, a leftist guerrilla group commonly known as FARC. The president initially blamed the Gulf Clan, the country's largest active drug cartel, but later shifted blame to FARC. Both groups operate in Antioquia.
Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez announced the creation of a new interministerial commission for climate change as Spain battles one of its worst wildfire seasons on record. The Spanish leader acknowledged the devastation wildfires have brought across the country and thanked other European countries for sending assistance.
Asturias no había vivido nunca que se recordara de manera tan recurrente temperaturas de más de 40 grados. Y esto creo que nos tiene que llevar a la reflexión de que, en efecto, estamos viendo cómo la emergencia climática avanza de manera cada vez más acelerada.
At least 4 people have died in Spain's wildfires this summer as rescue teams work hard to put out the blazes. In recent days, 20 wildfires have affected the region of Asturias in northwest Spain, with small signs of some fires being brought under control by Friday. The country is facing an historically bad wildfire season, with a record amount of hectares of land burned this year alongside Portugal. Billions of workers worldwide need better protection from extreme heat in the face of climate change and more frequent heat waves. That's the conclusion from a new report released by the World Health Organization, which said that more than 2.4 billion workers are exposed to excessive heat. These workers represent 71% of the world's total working population.
No one should have to risk kidney failure or collapse just to earn the living. Protecting workers from heat is a matter of life and death. It is not just about temperature, it's about inequality. The poorest workers are on the front lines of the climate crisis.
According to their estimates, excessive workplace heat leads to more than 22 million workplace injuries every year and almost 19,000 fatalities. It's the first time the World Health Organization has released a report specifically on heat stress at work. It said its findings should be a wake-up call. The organization also said adaptation is needed because heat waves are no longer rare. It warns that construction and agricultural workers are most at risk. The report comes as countries across Europe saw an increase in extreme temperatures this summer, triggering wildfires and other heat-related disasters.
An Australian trainee surgeon has been released from custody after being charged with secretly recording hundreds of medical colleagues in hospital restrooms. Ryan Cho will be released on the condition that he lives with his parents, who moved from Singapore to Melbourne following his arrest. The prosecutor argued that the charges presented Cho with an inducement to flee Australia, but the judge noted he had surrendered his Singapore passport and had no criminal connections to help him leave the country. While Cho became an Australian permanent resident in April, he would face deportation if he was convicted and sentenced to 12 months or longer in prison.
Rising temperatures are bringing harvests for French winemakers forward in 2025. This year in Gironde, intense summer heat brought the harvest forward by a week, particularly for the grapes used in white wine production. Last week, grape clusters intended for white wines faced temperatures approaching 40 degrees Celsius and a lack of water, straining the berries and accelerating the ripening process. For wine growers, summer heat is increasing on a yearly basis.
Le changement climatique rappelle aujourd'hui beaucoup plus des climats méditerranéens. En réalité, par ce réchauffement, on retrouve aujourd'hui une signature beaucoup plus méditerranéenne.
The more the grapes are exposed to the sun, the higher their sugar content increases. It's this sugar that, through fermentation during the winemaking process, transforms into alcohol, creating wines with a higher alcohol content. With more good vintages due to increasing temperatures, the wines are now of a higher quality, but are also heavier. This creates a problem for white wines in particular, as drinkers are not typically keen on white wines with over 14% alcohol.